Thank you for coming on the EFR podcast, episode 36. This is the EFR podcast, episode 36, featuring our guest, distinguished Poly Sci professor from Stony Brook University, also the Fox News political model analyst, Dr.
No. I'm just a guest. On it.
We have Dr. Can I get a one-time Dr. Helmut Norpoth? Norpoth, and he, can I get a one-time soul clap? Thank you for Dr. Norpoth. Thank you for coming on, sir.
Well, thank you for having me.
I remember the last time we had you 4 years ago. Next time we have to come for dinner sooner.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
Remember that.
We would invite you more and more often. As you know, we're counting down the presidential and congressional elections happening November 3rd, 2020. And thank you for coming on. As you have been coming on 4 years ago. We kind of wanted to have you on before the elections. As we lead on, we'll have you here and there, kind of just commentating and just analyzing on what's going on. But I brought you on because you brought 4 years ago in 2016 when President Trump was going against Secretary/Senator Hillary Clinton. You had a model that pretty much predicted the outcome, and you were pretty much correct, and you were able to give reasonings. So as we're about 5 months, 5 months into the next election, I wanted to kind of get you on to see what, to utilize that model that you have, what you call the primary model. Mm-hmm. And you've been able to discuss on Fox News and, kind of just tell our viewership what's going on in the elections, across the board.
Yeah, the model is essentially the same model, the same predictors, which is primary performance of the candidates, of the nominees, which is pretty clear. It's Joe Biden for the Democrats, Donald Trump for the Republicans. I don't really have to watch all the primaries, although I think pretty much by now they're done anyway. Typically, after about the first two, you have a pretty clear picture of what is happening. And it used to be New Hampshire, but I added one more in the last election cycle, which I think was a very wise move, because at least in the Democratic Party, one candidate usually has a strong hold on the African American support. And that makes a big difference, as we saw with Joe Biden this time. I mean, he was essentially given up for dead after New Hampshire and Nevada. And similarly, 4 years ago with Hillary Clinton, she sort of came back in South Carolina again, and as Obama did too in 2008. So very clearly in the Democratic Party, and if you want to get a gauge on what primaries tell you, you have to do that. For the Republicans, it's not that critical. In fact, I think this time the Republicans canceled the South Carolina primary because there was no contest. Right. And Donald Trump did very, very strong, had a very strong showing in New Hampshire against Bill Weld, got 85% of the vote. So this kind of a combined performance of the candidates in early states is a very strong predictor of what is happening in November. And a lot of people say that's crazy. Why should something that happens so early be such a good predictor? But when you have elections for about 100 years, going back to 1912, although in the early days I didn't just use New Hampshire, etc. The primary performance is a very solid gauge, and I think it is a good gauge because it really tests the candidates in a real election. It's not just hypothetical, like who are you going to support, or the economy, which may indirectly affect, of course, many of these things. On top of that, I do include what I call either a little bit in the vernacular, a swing of the pendulum, or a cycle that is operating in presidential elections, and which normally, let's say, to keep it simple, after one term sort of stays put. I mean, it doesn't swing toward the other side. After 2 or maybe 3 terms as the same party in the White House, it does swing, which we saw in 2016. So So there's a little different dynamic at work this time, 2020, sitting president after one term, seeking re-election, and doing very, very well in primaries against the nominee of the other party, who struggled. If you combine New Hampshire and South Carolina, Joe Biden clearly has a less commanding performance. And I mean, over 100 years of elections works out pretty well in predicting the outcome, which this time, according to my algorithm, gives Donald Trump a 91% chance of getting reelected. Now, I can stop right here. I can add something if you want to ask me a little bit more about that later. I don't want to just give a long lecture, which professors are sort of.
No.
You give me the signal, and I just start on and on and on. So maybe I should stop right here and save something for later.
No. I mean, that's pretty informative. So already, I can just see the headlines now, and Donald Trump taking the election, 91% of the election by Dr. Norpoth, which is something that you kind of pointed out in your model, is that you've predated it back over 100 years, and you've seen certain formulas from those those predicates from the past that you've been able to kind of institute. And you can say even through what's going on in turmoil, that you would think that the United States is burning right now because of what's going on with COVID and the protests. Mm-hmm. You really feel that he has that, which is a high percentage for a president to come off with natural disasters or just disasters that's been happening economically, socially, and political wise on his watch. For him to come back, to come back and actually win. There was a question that I believe one of the reporters stated, and she indicated, I don't know what network she was from, but she stated over 100,000 people have died. Do you think a president should be reelected? And she was inquiring because of what happened in COVID-19. Do you feel, even though with the model that you set, that or all the disadvantages that are against him, that the president will be reelected, and a smooth reelection, I guess, because you're saying 91%. You're not saying,
Well, I mean, it's hard to say that Donald Trump killed 100,000 people. I mean, I think it's a big stretch to blame him for these deaths. I mean, if he had done nothing and people could prove that if he didn't do anything, these people died. But I think that's such a long stretch to make. So I don't think that in any direct fashion the toll of the coronavirus is going to hurt the president. I mean, we didn't see that at all in the approval rating. I mean, when the outbreak came, in fact, the initial reaction was sort of like a little bit of a rally around the president. I mean, his approval rating actually spiked early on during the outbreak, and the Gallup poll, he had a record number, which he has sort of fallen down lately, but it didn't really, I think, affect him, and I don't think will by itself, but I think might be a more troublesome for him would be what he had to do or what other people had to do in order to curb this outbreak by the lockdown. I mean, the lockdown cost, I don't know, what's the number now, 40 million people or 20 million people to lose their job. And a lot of people say, unemployment, I mean, that's a killer. Like numbers like that, that's like the Depression, going to make him look like Herbert Hoover. But again, I would say that, again, the circumstances of this economic downturn are so closely connected to an attempt to do something about public health that if that is the perception, I don't think the unemployment numbers per se will be such a killer. And of course, I mean, there's been an incredible package of spending, stimulus spending, to mitigate the sort of consequences of that, which we didn't have during the Depression at all. I mean, there wasn't unemployment at all. And so these comparisons, I think, are pretty shaky. And of course, we don't know I mean, how much of the economy will recover between now and election day. So that's something to be seen. The other thing is, of course, the racial unrest, the protest wave over the killing, and I mean, there seemed to be another one almost every day, like that. And what was it in Georgia and in Atlanta? Forget the name of the person who was in a car. I mean, and then the backlash against that. I mean, these kind of things. I mean, there's some potential there of the president mishandling that or something getting out of hand. And and it looks to me like in the approval rating, the protest wave and whatever unrest has happened has done a little bit of a crimp in Trump's approval rating. I mean, the latest Gallup poll had him down to 39%, which was one of the lowest that he's had. So something is clearly happening. I wouldn't deny that. And the only thing I could say is that Donald Trump has let's say a reserve capital that he can muster that was evident in the way that he dominated the primaries, and that he may be able to capitalize on that the way some other candidates do, like Obama did too. I mean, Obama in 2012 did not look that good. In fact, I had a lot of colleagues who predicted that Obama would lose that election, and the same thing with Bush in 2004. I remember a very well-known pollster did exit polling in those days. About this time of the year, we met at a conference, and he said, Bush is going to go the way of Jimmy Carter. He's going to be a one-term president. I should have made a money bet with him. I didn't. I wasn't thinking. But we usually see these first-term presidents who did quite well in primaries to sort of come through, and that the others who don't, like Bush the elder in '92 and Carter in 1980, who were sort of doing the same thing as Trump right now, faltered early on, and that was sort of an omen for what was happening. So there are, I mean, first-term presidents who struggle over things going on in the country, and some in the end go down, and others don't, and so we'll have to see whether Donald Trump is going away the Jimmy Carter and Elder Bush in this election, and I'm certainly following all these moves very, very, very closely to get an idea.
All right, I actually have two questions. One is well, first of all, you spoke about the treasure chest that the president has, which I've heard about as well. That he has.
What? Say it again. I didn't get that word.
The treasure chest that his financial backing that President Trump has.
Oh yeah.
Compared to the vice president, which is a huge war chest. I believe that they've also speculated and spoke about. You put that as an advantage as well. But before we even go to that, let's kind of backtrack on when we were speaking about the economy, because we are the Economic and Finance Report. The Federal Reserve Chairman, Jerome Powell, said millions of jobs won't be coming back. You know, it's going to take a lot, even though unemployment has at least dropped to like, what is it, 13.5 or 14 point something to that effect. Still millions of jobs are not going to be coming back. The economic department or the economic team, like Larry Kudlow and Navarro, who handles the trade council for the president, stated that Mr. Powell is thinking too negative. What do you think about those comments from the economic, I guess, the economic team of the White House compared to what the Federal Reserve is maintaining from the Federal Reserve Chairman? What do you see? Is there a silver lining there, or is one more accurate than the other? What do you think?
Well, I would say that's sort of above my pay grade. I mean, I follow the economic news, and I mean, I have I did some took classes in college on economics and think I have an understanding of what's going on. I would say this is all a lot of speculation from the Fed Reserve Chairman or anybody else right now. Nobody has any idea exactly how the jobs will come back or not. I mean, I would stay out of that myself. I mean, I let other people argue over that.
No, well, I mean, even with what you said about the economic toll that is impacted on the country, you still feel that he still has a strong standing, though the economic implications of him shutting down the country for 3 months nationally and then slowly reopening, won't have effect on him politically, going towards reelection.
Well, I would say that it hinges very much on what kind of responsibility the American voters attach to the president for that. I mean, we saw that in 2012 when Obama went into re-election and it was what was sort of an economy that was still in pretty bad shape. It was getting better, but it was still not an economy that he would like to run for re-election on. And he won the election nevertheless, even on economic grounds, because, as evidence showed, when you ask people about who is responsible for the, let's say, poor economy in 2012, most people would pick the previous president, Bush. I mean, they blamed, maybe rightfully so, a predecessor, just the way they blamed Hoover maybe in 1936 for economic conditions that weren't very prosperous. I would say that it depends very much on how people resolve that, and I don't have the answer to that. If people conclude that this economic downturn, that Trump bears responsibility for that he's to blame, well, I think then I can see the economic news hurting him. If they don't, if they see it's something that he had to do because of something else and it wasn't his fault, he may dodge a bullet.
Right, but so pretty much the piggyback of what if they analytically state, okay, well, yeah, he had to shut it down because he's also letting people from China that they knew that possibly could have it and he could have stopped it earlier. That doesn't have an effect on how the results can, because they're going to say, well, it wasn't another president that started this. This didn't happen under Obama. This happened under you for knowing that the information came maybe January, February, whenever. We could have prevented it sooner. Does that have an implication of saying, okay, it's still under his watch?
Well, technically, I think, it's the president didn't shut down the economy. It was governors of various states who did that. Cuomo did for New York and Newsom for California and other governors for their state. I mean, it's up to the governors to do that. Some states didn't lock down or shut down at all. And Trump can say, well, I didn't do it. I mean, I didn't order these lockdowns, and when they started, I pushed very strongly against that. I urged them to reopen and see what happens. Well, they did. I mean, it's a mixed picture. I mean, there's states probably that will do pretty well, and if he can claim that these are states that reopened, then maybe it won't hurt him. I mean, probably what happens with the economy in New York isn't going to make or break him anyway. He's not going to win the state of New York. He's not going to win the state of California. No. I mean, the states that are probably doing quite well, this is something we have to, we learned that lesson the hard way in 2016, and that is the electoral college. Right. That's the big game. Okay. Right. It means states. Right. You have to look at states. What is happening in states? And if you look at states that are probably doing pretty well, maybe economically right now, I don't have the data for that, but somebody can probably come up with that. Like states like Florida, Georgia, Middle Western states that are Republican, etc. He may not suffer very much. So yeah, people aren't doing very well in the state right here in New York, maybe not in California. But you can write these states off anyway. They're not in play. Right. It's something you can see to the other side, so long as you can hold on. And I would bet that the Trump campaign thinks very much along these lines of having sort of parceled out the country into, the various states and the electoral votes, and they say, what do we have to do here? What's happening in Ohio, Florida, Wisconsin? Well, Wisconsin, I guess, has a Democratic governor, but so
Mhm.
this is something we have to probably fine tune our economic analysis to, and that is sort of state by state. And then, if there are states that are, let's say, a state like Ohio. Ohio is, normally pretty competitive. Ohio is
Right, because they were saying
and,
they were
so,
saying I'm sorry,
pardon?
I'm sorry. No, I was gonna say they were saying that there was another analysis. Maybe you can add on to this before I let maybe my other colleagues ask you a question. They were saying that if he loses one of the, I guess, toss-up states like Florida or Ohio, he has a tough. Have you taken into effect those type of states like Ohio or Florida, that like somebody like a Joe Biden who has more working class, came from like a Pennsylvania. Ohio is really kind of closely related to Pennsylvania, that type of Midwest belt. If Trump loses that one of those states, they say that he has a hard path to victory through the electoral college. Is that did you take that into account as well in your model, or
Well, I don't really, do a state by state analysis. I have some national breakdown. I do use the electoral college this time. I use the electoral votes, but it's not an aggregation of state by state. I'll add states together. I have a figure of the total electoral votes for a candidate, and I sort of track that from 1912 to 2016, and I use my predictors to come up with the number of the predicted electoral vote for Biden or Trump, and so I don't go into any particular state and have data on that. That's what somebody else has to do.
Got you.
Mm-hmm.
Any of my colleagues here just sitting there, just me blasting away. You guys, James, anything?
Yeah. One question or request, I guess, from the doctor is for our viewers. Could you state what your conclusion is? Who's going to most likely win, and in clear, uncertain terms?
Mm-hmm.
Are you favoring Biden or Trump or
I'm pretty clear
unknown
about that. Yeah, I think the number is 362 electoral votes for Trump, and at least 172 for Biden. So I have a number. I have a breakdown for the electoral vote. And in addition, I say that the chances of Donald Trump winning with any number of electoral votes is 91%. So he will win, okay? And the specific prediction that I have were those numbers. So it's a pretty far-fetched, it's a pretty tall order to say Donald Trump is going to get something like 360 electoral votes. I agree that is that sounds a little far-fetched, but that's what the algorithm spits out that I use to do it, just the way it did 4 years ago for Trump when it also was. 4 years ago, I didn't make specifically a number for the electoral college, but I said that the chance of him getting elected was something like 87%.
Okay. Thank you there. One comment. One thing that we're seeing with a lot of for the last couple of years, actually, violence against the police, from shootings to what we're seeing today. A lot of that is an indication of the dissatisfaction of people to the government, because the police are the face of the government for the people. So when you start seeing a lot of resentment, hostility, etc., towards the police, actually it's towards the government. And that kind of makes for an interesting mix with an election coming up.
Yeah, I mean, we all look back and we look back at something like 1968 when we had maybe a very similar experience throughout the election year of a lot of unrest, a lot of shootings. I mean, the conclusion in 1968 was that it certainly helped a law and order candidate like Richard Nixon, that most Americans were not very supportive even of legitimate protests, which may be different today. I mean, I think there may have been a culture change compared to that, but any kind of a outburst of the kind of things that I think the kind of thing that we see when people are saying, like, defund the police. Okay, this is so unpopular that I think it backfires on the people who have legitimate issues about what is happening, because people seize on that and they say this is so unreasonable. No. We cannot support people that even the protesters are supporting, or the cause that they are advocating is sort of undermined by unreasonable demands like that. So I would say, I mean, if you were a Democrat, if you want to do something to just tone that down, I mean,
no. I think
don't come up with something.
No. But I think
like
I think with the defund the police, that's like the far left. Well, let's I mean, both sides have like extremists, right? But if we're looking at, you know, Joe Biden, and then we're looking at Donald Trump, you know, and we're looking at pretty much two similar people, actually, to be honest, because Joe Biden, I think, can kind of also take away that middle belt that we're talking about, that Ohio, Michigan, Wisconsin, because of the upbringing that he came from Rust Belt, Pennsylvania. If we're looking, you know, that type of ideologue, you don't think that the race could be closer, you know, because the analysts were saying that, listen, Trump's, you know, the Ohio, which could go either way because of somebody like a Joe Biden who's, you know, come from that middle belt, Pennsylvania, that can cut right through Ohio. You know, it's very hard for Trump to, if he loses Ohio or even loses Florida, which is, I think, the second highest in unemployment, they said, you know, it's very hard for him because of the electoral college. That's why I thought maybe you could kind of add on to that, because there's analysts who are saying that aspect as well. You know, because you have Joe Biden who's, you know, he's not going to go far left and say, he already came out and said it. He's distancing himself from defunding the police. But the ideology of Joe Biden and him having that middle belt, that Rust Belt states, you know, like Ohio, Michigan, Minnesota, you know, it can be very damaging to someone like Trump. But we don't know. That's what, you know, but there's analysts who are saying that if Joe Biden can take that, which Clinton failed to do, you know, she wanted just to focus on data. She didn't focus on those families, those poor families from those Rust Belt states, which Joe Biden is kind of eager to focus on. You know, if you don't have any, you haven't factored that into your calculations at all with because there's analysts who are saying that Trump victory to get the whole three something is very hard right now because Joe Biden can get those lower income class, middle class people who are struggling, especially now because 40 million people are unemployed and may not want to even come back to work because of the COVID-19. You know, but that model hasn't been factored into your model at all.
Well, I would say that the fact that Joe Biden emerged as the strongest Democratic candidate shows that.
Oh, by the way, I'm not picking sides. I'm just trying to pull you guys. I'm not picking sides. I just want to hear, you know, you're a good talker, so I wanted to get your side of the opinion. By the way, so I just wanted to get your.
Yeah, I mean, I would say the fact that Joe Biden emerged as the strongest Democratic candidate and gets the nomination is a sign that is sort of mainstream, moderate, middle of the road approach. I mean, has appeal in the party and will probably be very helpful in the general election. At the same time, he has to fight off a very strong left-wing constituency that is not going to shut up, and that might make life difficult for him by putting him into a position where he has to disavow them at the risk of offending them and demotivating them to play a big part in his campaign to sort of keep maybe the middle in line. I mean, that's a classic dilemma that a candidate faces, that in order to sort of toe the middle of the road, you have to forsake some of the hardcore, very active, motivated people on your fringe, and of course they might dominate the agenda, which the other side will then exploit, and will sort of tag you with that brush. I mean, they'll say, look, yeah, Biden, I mean, he may be okay, but look, I mean, the kind of company he has for these people who say these kind of things, and they'll play these statements by, what was it, Ilhan Omar today? She said the police departments are rotten to the root, or something like that. Mm-hmm. I mean, that is clearly something Biden would never sort of endorse, but he has to deal with somebody in his own party who says that. And then he has to play sort of an acrobatic act of trying to sound reasonable when other people like that make these kind of statements. I mean, that's the name of the game.
Mm-hmm. No, I agree. Anybody else? John, you have any questions? No.
I'm Canadian.
Canadian. He's Canadian, so.
I'm Canadian.
All right. What I want to let's speak about the model, I guess. If you want to go into Dr. Helmut, Dr. Norpoth, about I guess the percentages. I guess you were trying to go into it a little bit, and you kind of pull back. You can actually go into more if you like about the model and how the specifications come about. About that.
Well, I mean, the sort of discovery that I made was when I looked at an election that was actually quite a fascinating one, which many people in my world and history of political science only pay attention to because there was a strong third-party candidate called Teddy Roosevelt. Teddy Roosevelt, Woodrow Wilson, and William Howard Taft, and actually a socialist too, Eugene Debs, ran in 1912 as well, got about 6% of the vote. It was fascinating line of characters. You think about it. I mean, whenever did we have such an interesting cast of characters? And it just happened, and I don't know. I don't know when I found out about that. I had not learned it in school myself. I mean, I had never had a class. I never had read a book in my education or when I was teaching American elections. And I noticed that 1912 was the election in which presidential primaries sort of made their debut, and they made their debut with a big bang in that Teddy Roosevelt used this format to propel his candidacy for essentially a third term as a Republican. And normally, by today's standard, he should have been given the nomination again. But this was not today's politics, where the primary sort of dictate in the end the nomination. The parties stuck with the sitting president, William Howard Taft, the loser in primaries. And it just so happened that on the Democratic side, Woodrow Wilson was the winner in primaries on the Democratic side, which I'd never known. I don't think you talk to any political scientist, anybody who even studies elections, and you ask them, and they said, I don't know. I mean, I don't pay attention to it. I don't think primaries were important in 1912. They just, took about, 60 years after that in the 1960s and early 70s. But if you look back, you realize it really started in 1912. And so it's a very fascinating pattern in that in the end, well, of course, Teddy Roosevelt mounted a very, very vigorous third-party campaign, which he lost the primary over the primary loser in the general election. And that kind of a pattern, if you go forward from that point on through American elections, I mean, for people in my field to look for regularities, look for laws, look for things that have some kind of a systematic pattern, it's amazing to me that nobody had ever sort of noticed that, or demonstrated that, or tested that. And so it's okay with me. I mean, if I have it to myself, that's okay. All right, and then that is essentially what I'm using. And the big modification is that from elections beginning in 1950s, when if you watch the pattern, New Hampshire really dominates the primary picture, and for Democrats and Republicans, pretty much for the next 50 years. It's the first primary. It is also practically nowadays an open primary. That is, anybody who wants to can participate. It's very easy if you're not registered, let's say as a Democrat, to vote in the Democratic New Hampshire primary or in the Republican primary. I mean, you have party registration, but independents can do either way. And if you're registered for the wrong party, you can change on election day. So New Hampshire is really, it's not like a caucus. I mean, it's not like a hardcore party activist getting together like Iowa. Even though New Hampshire, I mean, I agree, it's not a representative state. It's not a microcosm of the country, and clearly it has one big element missing that is very, very important for the Democratic nominee, and that is the support of Black Americans. And you get that in a state like South Carolina. So if you put that in as a little balance, all right, New Hampshire, yeah, because first pretty wide open, pretty heavily contested, and then South Carolina together. I mean, you have some. I mean, you get a pretty good metric for what is going to happen in the end, and if it doesn't happen, I mean, this time, then, well, I have to eat some crow. I have to pay off some debts. Bets.
What's your current batting average right now? What is your current batting average in the results?
Well, the only election I can't get right is 1960, because I didn't make it enough for 1960. But in retrospect, I mean, just fitting the model to 1960. 1960 is something that doesn't work. The other one is 2000, where the popular vote prediction was correct, but in the end, because of what happened in Florida and the butterfly ballot and other odd things in that state, Bush was declared the winner by something like, I don't know, 500 votes out of 5 million. So Florida was certainly a fluky. 2000 was fluky. 2016 was not. I mean, 2016 there was no dispute about Donald Trump winning Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania. I mean, there was no argument about something. I mean, being corrupted or people, I mean, made stupid mistakes, etc. So other than that, I mean, I'm betting pretty perfectly.
Nice. That's a pretty good batting average.
Yeah, let's say.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, I thank you for coming on. I know that have like have campaigns called you to help them, like local campaigns, statewide, or like other states to help in campaign, like different models for their campaigns, or have you utilized it in a local or state level?
Well, I haven't been contacted by any political campaign, but I was contacted after the 2016 election by a Major League Baseball team to see whether I would have forecasting skills that would help them recruit players at the professional level.
Right.
And I studied I brushed up on some baseball, but nothing came of that. I had inquiries from somebody in France who said whether I would want to get together and do something for a French election, which has primaries, but they're very novel. They only have a few. They're very irregular. They're sort of voluntary. And I had some, I mean, I've inquiries from a number of different countries but I always have to ask them, okay, do you have primaries? And if they say no, then well, you'd have to sort of do something different. I mean, in the end, I think what you need is some kind of an assessment of the strength of the nominee. Okay, is a nominee a strong? Does he have is he stronger than the other guy? Essentially, okay, is he better than the other person? Okay, and primaries in this country are a pretty good, as far as I would say, leading indicator.
Right.
But I might think about some other leading indicators in other elections where you don't have primaries, and but that's for another project.
All right, I have a good guy, bad guy. What do you think of Nate Silver?
Well, I sort of follow him, and Nate Silver, of course, came out of sports betting. I mean, he made a career out of, especially in baseball. I read some of his articles, and they're very good. I mean, they're very analytical, and he's sort of like a Moneyball type. They could have made the movie about him if they had recruited him to do the Moneyball guy in the movie. I forget what his name was, who sort of got involved with the Oakland Athletics and then got that team to win. I don't know, they win a World Series, but they got a lot better. And so what he does is essentially using those kind of skills in forecasting sports outcomes to election outcomes. And of course, we all know he did fabulously well in 2008 and again in 2012. But he really, I mean, that's to take a to me in 2016, because, I mean, you look, I mean, he was 70% at the end, 90% for a while. Hillary Clinton would win. He sort of toned it down a little bit at the end. You can sort of see it getting a little bit, it was still at least 75%, both in popular electoral college. And of course, I mean, the Huffington Post had it at 98% for Hillary.
Right.
Nate Cohen at the upshot, I think, was about close to that. So all these models that essentially are, I would call them poll aggregation model. They all use opinion polls, and they aggregate them based on some, I don't know, very fancy statistical algorithm that weights the polls and updates them depending on the latest, etc. And so you live by the poll, you die by the poll. I mean, opinion polling, and I think the biggest problem in 2016 was I have to hook out my power cord. Okay.
No.
I think was the unreliability of state polls, and I think that should be a warning for this year too. They don't get fixated on state polls, because I mean, polling is an expensive proposition. National polling and state polls don't have the resources to do the kind of thorough poll, and telephone polling is getting very, very iffy because people don't answer their phone, and so there's a lot of technology difficulties right there. And in the end, I mean, you look at the state polls in 2016, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Michigan, none of them gave you an inkling that Trump was making a big splash.
And not to cut you off, but people just human error of people lying. You know, people lie on the phone, even with the phone poll. So, you know, people sometimes do that just because, I don't know, that's just human nature. I don't know why people focus so much on the phone polls. I don't see how the phone polls are effective, because people lie on those polling so they can get the people off the phone. You know? So
maybe, yeah.
So. Yeah. So you know, I just wanted to see if you had anything bad to say about Nate Silver. You know, I'm from the other side. You know, jokingly, nothing seriously bad. You know, on his end. But I just wanted to kind of get your insight. So why don't
he's 2 for 3. He's 2 for 3.
He's 2 for 3. Yeah.
Finally got one wrong.
He's 2 for 3. But have you thought about, because you're on Fox so much, doing something like kind of like what he's doing with ESPN, like what you're on Fox so much, speaking about analytical work with with your primary models and just models in general in election. Have you thought about maybe working with Fox on something like what he's doing with ESPN or with
Well, I don't really make any. I mean, I don't make contact. I mean, it's like you. I mean, you called me and you said you want to come on, and I usually say I'm very happy to do that. So Laura Ingram called me, and if somebody else calls me, and if somebody calls me from MSNBC or CNN or PBS or whatever, I haven't gotten any calls. I didn't get any calls from them 4 years ago, and I don't think I will get any this year either. It's just because they see the forecast, they don't like it, and then they say, "Oh, this guy is an idiot, and we don't want to talk to him." And yeah. I mean, I've heard that. I get. I mean, you get lots of reactions.
People should not have.
That's just a mild version.
People
I
should not.
had somebody. Pardon?
Now I was gonna say
Yeah.
people should.
I had somebody emailed me and it said, "Your model could be done by a fifth grader." What are you talking about? This is just so. I mean, I don't know what a fifth grader. I mean, I have respect for fifth graders. I mean, but that's just the kind of thing you get. I mean, people who don't like the forecast. Okay.
Right.
They will come up with things to malign you. People who like it, okay, they're complimentary. It's not really that they are looking very hard at the mathematics, etc., and then say, "Oh yeah, I mean, I can see what you're doing. I don't think I'm happy with the end result, but I understand. I mean, what you're doing, and it's not unreasonable. But well, people have their strong views on that, and in this kind of business, that often trumps everything."
Anybody who has emotional problems and wants to bring in their own emotion, again, it's a human error, human emotion.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So they shouldn't bring their problems into it. But man, I'd like to thank you for coming on the EFR podcast. Thank you. This is episode 36.
Thank you, Sam, for having me. And thank you for your questions, and I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
We will be having you back, as the elections get closer and closer to see if that 91. So you're sticking with 91%. You're sticking with 91.
I'm stuck with that. I can't get away from that.
No changing that. All right, that's about it. I salute you, sir. Thank you, Dr. Norpoth, and we'll be in contact. This is the EFR podcast. I'm Sammy BE along with James Lyman and Jonathan Sterling. Thank you.
Thank you. I look forward to it again. Okay.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.